This meeting is being recorded.
All right, welcome everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us here for this information session on writing Molecular Foundry user proposals. My name is Shannon Siston. I'm the user program director at the Molecular Foundry, and I'm also joined by 4 panelists that represent a variety of technical facilities across the Foundry and various roles, including those of staff, users, and reviewers. I'm going to start out by giving you a little bit of information about the Molecular Foundry and about our proposal process. After sort of setting the stage a little bit, I want to leave plenty of time for the panelists to share their perspectives and also for you to ask questions. So the Molecular Foundry is one of 5 nanoscale science research centers that are funded by the U.S. Department of Energy. We're very much multidisciplinary, ranging from material science to biology, physics, and more, chemistry. And we consider ourselves a knowledge-based user facility. We do offer instrumentation and capabilities, but we also offer expertise and collaboration with our staff. We're structured in 7 technical facilities and then 1 overarching capability as well. Broadly speaking, we group these into synthesis, inorganic, biological, and organic synthesis of materials, characterization of materials through high-resolution transmission electron microscopy, and a variety of other modes of imaging and manipulation of nanostructures, a fabrication facility where people can create devices with features on the nano length scale, and also a theory facility to kind of understand why materials behave the way they do at that length scale. And pretty new to our offerings, and also represented here by one of the panelists today, is a data infrastructure group that cuts across the various facilities. This is a little bit about our user community that we serve. In fiscal year 2023, we served over 1,000 users. About 2/3 of those, or 3/4 or so, are folks who come on site to access our capabilities, while the balance are accessing capabilities and collaborating remotely. You can see that we served 35 states and 26 countries in 2023, and a number of small businesses as well. In total, 199 different institutions, including universities, national labs, industry, were represented. And altogether, those folks put out about 300 publications that acknowledge the Foundry for resources in the work. So our user program is open to folks from around the world to get access to the expertise and instrumentation. We have a very collaborative, safe, multidisciplinary environment. Our program tries to have a fair and transparent process for review of proposals to access the capabilities. We try to minimize your barriers for access and try to be responsive to your needs. We have 2 calls for proposals, for standard proposals each year. So one is coming up very soon in the spring. It opens March 1st with proposals due Thursday, March, I think it's the 28th. And then the other will be 6 months offset from that. Our proposals are only about 3 pages long for the technical section, and we do have an online web portal where you complete that. Then the proposals go on to peer review by panels of experts beyond our staff. Proposals that are accepted can be active for 1 year. We also have a flexible start date within a year of acceptance for you to get your project going. It's free to access for folks who intend to publish their results. And intellectual property that's developed during the course of the project is owned by the inventor or inventors, which sometimes does include the National Laboratory. This is a little bit about our proposal review process. Once proposals are submitted, they go through some review by our staff to make sure that they're complete and correct, that it's technically feasible, so we have what you're asking for. Then goes on to review by our external review board. who look at the proposals independently and then also discuss them as a team to determine a final ranking. We then take as many proposals as we can until we reach our capacity, and proposals that are approved go through a contract execution process for any new organizations that don't already have existing user agreements with us. And we collect some additional safety information. Once those are in place, you can start your project. One thing that I'm adding here is that consultation with our staff is optional but encouraged before submission of your proposal. Our staff love to consult with you to give you, a good sense of scope-wise what can fit. Sometimes there could be material system questions where one might be particularly suited to the instrumentation that we have, whereas another would be much more difficult to make it work. So our staff are kind of ready and willing, eager to hear from you and to consult with you, especially if you begin that process, now or pretty soon, so there's time to have a cycle of feedback before the proposals are due on March 28th. These are the 4 sections of our proposal. So one where you lay out the project goals and significance. So why is your project important? What kind of scientific problem are you trying to address? What is your goal in the context of this 1-year project? A detailed timeline and plan for your project. So we want to have enough detail there that we can understand what you want to do and what equipment you want to use, which expertise you want to consult with, and be convince the reviewers that this is a 1-year scope project. Then additionally, there's this resource request. You can indicate what will be done at your home institution and what you need from the Foundry, and a section where you describe your relevant expertise. So this helps us understand how your team's expertise and training is complementary to what our team is bringing to the table. And these are the scoring criteria that our reviewers see, along with the point allocation. So these are kind of the prompts that we give them so that they can consider how to score your proposal. So you can see that it mirrors what we're asking you for in the proposal structure, but has some maybe more pointed questions about impact, scope, whether the resource request is justified, and if users are prepared to do the work here. I do have one example proposal that I'll show you briefly, but again, I want to leave plenty of time for questions and panelists. We do have quite a few tips and examples on our website. So you can go to this site, so foundry.lbl.gov is our main site, and there's a section on the user program. We have a proposal guide that can give you all the details about proposals. We have several proposal tips and examples. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen. Do that, and then I want to share the proposal instead. Here we go. So we do have permission from all the authors of these proposals to include the samples on our website, and then also we have permission to share this example with you. I wanted to just give you a sense for kind of, here's the length, and we do have character limits on the various sections. This is about how much you're looking at. And I want to point out a few features of this proposal that made it strong. So toward the start here, they're framing the technological impact of the problem that they want to address. They get a little bit more specific here to say, this is the promising class of materials that we're hoping to look at. You can see they have used reference citations that helps build credibility that they understand the system that they want to work with. It is a very direct and clear statement of their intended work. They also frame the proposed work in the context of the prior work, so identifying the need for the specific proposal to advance the science. They do name the expertise of the person that they're hoping to engage with at the proposal. They discuss kind of set up two complementary approaches that they're going to use. So it's not, wouldn't be required, but it doesn't, that lended sort of some robust credibility here. They do use images. So you have the opportunity to add figures, images to your proposal. In this case, we have clear and relevant images that are connected to the text. And they help support an intuitive understanding for the reviewers who, as you know, are going to look at lots and lots of these proposals during the course of a couple of weeks. In the need for the Foundry, they really kind of try to make the case here for why the Foundry is the best place to do the work. And they provide some details that back that up. Their project plan and timeline is sufficiently detailed and specific to make it clear that 1 year is an appropriate scope for this work. So, they talk about, we're going to do a month with this, we're going to do a month, 4 to 5 months we'll spend doing that. So they've got enough detail there that fleshes out what they plan to use. We can see, which capabilities they're going to use, which pieces are done at their home institution, which ones are done here at the Foundry. In this relevant expertise section, there is information about prior training where it's relevant, so fully trained here. And prior training on capabilities is not a requirement. We have a lot of people that are just fabulous at doing training here, and that is in scope for us. But if you do have some training, it's helpful that we know that so that we can get a sense of the capacity. So just how much staff time that will be taking. And here you can see they've got a statement of expertise as well. Okay, and just I will give you a heads up about just a few other things and then turn it over to our panelists. Hold on, I'm trying to share this again. Besides our standard proposal, we have a few other types of proposals. We have one that's a sample-only proposal where you'd like to request a sample of a material that we already have. Usually people are discerning this from a publication that they read of ours where something was synthesized. We also have an instrument-only proposal, which is for folks that are already trained, existing users that want to extend their access to a maximum of 2 instruments. You can submit sample-only and instrument-only proposals at any time. And we have a rapid access proposal that kind of bridges access in between those 2 standard calls. So if you've got a great idea, you're under a lot of time pressure, instead of having to wait until the next standard call, you could submit a rapid access proposal in the meantime. I also want to mention these travel opportunity grants. So we've been doing this for a few cycles now. We are offering $2,000 to offset costs associated with travel to the Molecular Foundry for eligible institutions. So the PI named on the proposal should meet 1 or more of these criteria, either from an EPSCoR state or territory, being at a minority serving institution, or an emerging research institution as defined by the DOE. We do have some links from our website where you can check to see if your institution qualifies, and it should be at least 150 miles from Berkeley Lab. So the application for that goes in at the same time as your proposal submission. Is not part of your proposal. It is not reviewed by the proposal review board. Rather, once we know which proposals are accepted, then a different team looks at those applications and makes some decisions. All right. So I want to introduce our panelists and turn it over to them. So we have Ed Barnard representing our data infrastructure team. We have Stephanie Ribbett, who is a user in the National Center for Electron Microscopy facility. We have Matt Ryan, who is a reviewer for our organic facility. And we have Erin Tynes-Hammock, who's a staff member in our nanofabrication facility. And so I'm hoping that they might touch on some of these questions about what scientific and technical staff look for when they're doing their review, what makes a good proposal, and then what do PRB members or reviewers look for, and how a writer can address all the review criteria there. or even some common areas for proposal improvement. And tips or ideas on what was helpful when they were writing the proposal or working with feedback before or after proposal results to refine the proposed work. So I'll stop sharing now so we can see our panelists' faces a little bit bigger. Maybe Ed, do you want to kick us off with some suggestions here?
Sure. The first thing I would say is that the thing that's optional is probably your best bet for succeeding well in proposals, which is talk to us. We are happy and allowed to talk to you about what we can do and what makes sense from the capabilities that we have and like our research interests and kind of aligning everything so that you guys have an understanding of what we can do, what your research is and how it fits in and how we can make those connections, because then that can be incorporated into your proposal and it will like the proposal has to be able to be done at the Foundry. And if you don't talk to us, it's not, while we do have a website to tell you that we have X instrument, it's not going to tell you in what state that instrument is and what it can really do, because websites and papers are lagging indicators of what we can currently do. So really come talk to us as early as possible so that we can work with you to build a successful proposal.
Thanks, Ed. And then Aaron, I don't know if you want to play off any of that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to this point. I recently joined as a staff scientist, but actually my longest involvement with the Foundry has been as a proposal review board member in the imaging facility. So even though I'm a staff scientist now, I can speak to the staff feasibility side of it, but I know a lot more about the review process than I actually know about being a staff scientist at the Foundry. And I can second Ed's comment, really engaging with the staff scientists so that you have a boots on the ground understanding of what's capable right now is very important to writing a proposal that's going to lead to success. Because it's a scientific facility, instruments come up, instruments go down. It's always worth checking the instrument weather and seeing whether it's the right time. Because if we're in the process of waiting for a 6-month upgrade on a tool, then you probably want to wait to submit your proposal for the next 6-month cycle to make sure that you're on phase with the science that you'd like to do. And then the second biggest piece of advice that I can give to any of the users that are going to be submitting, not only is it worthwhile for you to run it by us just to get a sense of whether it's aligned to mission and well written and comprehensible. The other thing is run it by the other members of your group. Like the most common reason that we see a proposal that just doesn't make it across the line, it's just suffering from written in a vacuum without any feedback from anyone. And I've written a lot of proposals, and I can guarantee that the things that I write are improved by the feedback from my peers and mentors. And you should definitely use those communal resources that you have at your disposal to communicate to the proposal review board the best take and why the science is both interesting and achievable. And then the final thing I can say is everything in the kitchen sink proposals don't tend to fare well, because we really do have one of everything. And if you propose to use one of everything, then that kind of tells us that you haven't actually drilled your research agenda down to the point that within a 12-month time frame, you'll be able to get measurements done on one of everything. So think strategically. If you actually do have a research program that requires the use of one of everything, just break it up into manageable sub-proposals and stage it out over a few cycles of submission, as opposed to just trying to stuff it all into one mega proposal that boils the ocean of science. Which we can applaud the concept, but in actuality, those proposals don't turn out very well. So that's my 10 years of looking at proposals submitted to the Foundry. That's my bullet points of best practices to go about authoring one.
Yeah. And one thing, if you do want access to a lot of things and you just want to make sure that you're getting all of those things in, don't put it in the proposal. Make your proposal focused on like the core part. And when you're here as a user, one of the things like we are not super restrictive of like you cannot use this tool because it wasn't in your proposal. It's really a discussion of scope that can happen while you're here as a user to say, oh, I realize I need to understand this part of my sample that I didn't realize at the beginning. I would like to talk to somebody who's an AFM expert and see if we can use that tool to
Yep.
expand the scope a little bit of our project. And that type of discussion and change of scope is allowed, and it's kind of the right way to go rather than saying I want access to everything under the Foundry's roof.
Yeah. And that's a pattern of success amongst the users. To Ed's point, is you write a well-focused proposal that has, key scientific deliverables that can happen over the course of a 12-month period that will lead to 1 or 2 high-impact publications. But of course, it's science. Like, you start your measurements, you don't actually know. If you knew what you were going to get, it wouldn't be science. So we have a lot of tools that when you have those, this is funny moments, just go to the scientists that are responsible for those tools and share your this is funny moments. And 9 times out of 10, if the instrument's up, available, and not overburdened with a crowd of users actively poking it every day, they'll give you time to check on those. And that's there's always the how do you feed your next proposal problem, or how do you feed your next grant submission problem. Those are great opportunities for you to gather the kind of initial evidence that a follow-up proposal would be merited, or even initial evidence that you need for a grant filing to fund whomever you're going to send to the Foundry. So 100%.
And I think if you have experience with being a user at a light source, for example, or writing proposals for that, light sources have a much more like you have a certain number of 8-hour shifts on a beam line, and that's what's part of the proposal. However, here, because we are this interdisciplinary place that users tend to have a longer stay, our interaction and how you do your science will change over the course of the 12-month proposal time and project time. So things are allowed to change, and we can work with it. So we want users who are want to engage with us, and that's why we want users to come to us before the process happens, because we will be basically collaborators and working with you throughout this whole process.
Thanks. And so, having heard from some staff and some reviewer expertise as well, I want to pass it over to Matt, who spans reviewer and user space. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I definitely liked what Aaron said. I think a high degree of specificity and quantifying everything you can in the proposal helps you stand out. So what that literally looks like is putting a table of how many hours you expect to use an instrument per month, per quarter, and it has to be reasonable. So I think that's definitely feels strange, I think, to the first-time proposal writer to quantify that exactly, but it really helps the reviewers, trust and know that you understand what the workflow looks like and the burden that's going on the staff. So I think that's really helpful. And I know it feels strange, but just go ahead and put it in a table, put how many hours you expect to use on every specific instrument. That's really helpful. The other piece of advice is I would treat the criteria as a checklist, not as a inspiration of how to write the proposal. It's a literal checklist of elements to include. As the reviewer, we go through the list and we look for all these elements, and we don't like to get imaginative about what was intended by the text. We like to see an exact statement of this is what I'm going to do in this timeline with this resource, and this is why it's impactful. So definitely treat it like a checklist, not a guideline, I'd say.
Thanks, Matt. And so, Steph, you're approaching this from the user perspective. Do you have any tips for fellow users and prospective users on how to how to write a strong proposal, maybe how to work with feedback? Any tips there?
Yeah, pretty similar suggestions. I think that the proposal should really be just addressing one scientific question and sort of have one goal spelled out. And I have had a really good experience talking to staff beforehand and getting feedback on my proposals. everything from if I want to do a certain type of measurement, making sure I'm specifying the right instrument and right microscope in the proposal, not making a mistake that way, to getting really good feedback about how to tune my scientific questions and goals. So I would really recommend talking to the scientists as well.
All right. Any of the panelists have anything else that you want to throw out there as tips or suggestions before we open it up?
I would say one thing that Matt and Steph just said about talking to the staff, especially for like the amount of hours that you expect. If you haven't talked to the staff or really understand the instrument you're working with, you're not going to know how many hours a month it's going to take to do what you say. And so, really talking with the staff to make sure that your numbers are in the ballpark of what is feasible and schedulable, and will get you the answers you want. We'll make that table of how many hours you expect to use seem reasonable to the reviewers. If those hours look completely off, that's going to be a red flag to say that you may not really understand what you're trying to do. And so having that conversation to build those numbers is valuable.
Right, because a lot of the instruments have more specific restrictions that are not advertised. I think like Aaron said, right, like the NMR, for example, during working hours before 1 p.m. is broken up into 15-minute time slots. So if you don't know that and you claim you're going to take 5 hours a day, that's not compatible with how that instrument is run practically. So definitely important to understand the parameters of each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd love to put all this information on the website, but realistically that doesn't happen. So talking to us, all our email addresses and phone numbers are even on the website. So that's the easiest way to get information and get us excited about your proposal.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, I mean, the one of the biggest and most important resources at the Foundry is the staff. So they are all experts in their domains, and sometimes in multiple domains. So if you haven't really contacted the staff members to help you in the construction of your proposal, then you don't have the context necessary, especially for some of the equipment we have. It's one of a kind in the world. You're applying to use the Foundry because there isn't another one. We have the one, and making projections about how to use the only thing that exists without talking to the person that designs and operates it, you won't write a proposal that actually has all the information that you need until you reach out and converse with them.
And do that early, because we will get a lot of people trying to talk to us at the last week of proposals being due. So start now for this proposal that's coming due next month.
Thanks. I do want to open it up for anybody on the call who's got questions. So I'll ask that you please either use the raising your hand function or the chat function, but not the Q&A function, please. Anybody out there have some questions? Andy.
Hi, I had a quick question about returning users. So I am in my first year as a user, Foundry, and I'm wondering about how to apply for follow-on for the next year, and at what point I should do that.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So we absolutely welcome return users follow-on proposals. You do have to recompete. So there are some other systems out there where maybe you kind of just put in a very simple one paragraph request to extend, but we here like a full proposal. So you're going to want to time that depending on what your needs are. If you want continuous access with no interruption, which is what most people want, you want to look at what's the, when does your proposal expire versus when are results communicated. So for the proposals that come in this time, results are going to be communicated by May 17th. So assuming that you are, as a return user, you already have a contract between Berkeley Lab and your home organization, you're going to get, information if it's accepted around May 15, 16, or 17. So if that is the, kind of the right timeline, then you want to submit for this call, or if you've got more than 6 months left to go on your proposal after that, you could wait until the next one. You want to make sure that you describe for our reviewers what you have achieved so far with the project. So there will be opportunities for you to, for example, add publications that maybe result. Sometimes, you might not be at that point yet. You can still describe, what progress you've made, and then make sure that you articulate additional goals for what the future will bring. The proposals come in through the same portal. So it's the same form, you select standard proposal, and then there will be a question that says, is this a follow-on proposal? And you'll say yes there, and that'll prompt a new pop-up box that will ask you which proposal it's following on and to describe your progress from the previous one. Any staff or reviewers or users have other things that Andy should keep in mind?
Yeah, I would say don't just copy and paste the original proposal. We see a couple of that each bucket, and that's not really in the spirit of recompeting for the process. So definitely put time into differentiating the new proposal from the previous and making clear the progress that was made. It's definitely interesting to see all the same figures, same exact text, copy and pasted back to back.
Yeah, and
you're allowed to do some of that because it's of course a continuation of the project, but don't just wholesale copy and paste everything.
yeah, I would say exactly to that point, show that it's an evolving document, that you have been participating and reformulated your approach to the science according to the measurements that you've done. And also try and get your final reports in. That's one of the main kind of good communal behavior checks that the PRBs do look at. If you or your group is behind by like 5 years on final reports where you haven't given us the statistics on what you've been doing at the Foundry, we'll flag it in the proposal review boards and make comments accordingly that you need to catch up with your reporting homework.
And just one quick follow-up is, I think our contract expires in August, so I should apply this cycle for that May deadline.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to add that the final reports are not especially long. So it's just some quick little bits about, did you have some conference presentations? Did you submit some papers? Did you?
Yeah.
It doesn't take long. Yeah.
But it's important for us as the Foundry because that's how we communicate back to the DOE the impact of the science that you're doing. And the more you guys report back to us, the easier it is for us to defend the continued existence of the awesome community resource that is the Foundry. So low lift, high impact.
Thanks. What other questions do we have? Does anybody have questions about contracts or about proposal types? Anything else while you've got these folks on the line here?
One of the questions that we do get often is about the IP stuff, especially for industrial users. I don't know, Shannon, you want to give a quick overview of that?
Sure, I can take a crack at that. So we have two access modes with respect to intellectual property. One is, I guess, what we'd consider the bread and butter, what we do, the normal operation mode, which is our non-proprietary user agreement. So that refers to the contract, and that is the free access. That's for work that's done with intent to publish, and most of our users access us in that mode. If you and you can refer to the language of those agreements on our website, and if you have any trouble finding them, just reach out to me. I'll be happy to point you in the right direction. And for those, if you do discover or reduce to practice something new that in terms of intellectual property, reach out to the user office, and we will work with you and your staff scientists, your assigned scientist at the Foundry, and the lab's intellectual property office, to make sure that we're filing that in an appropriate way that reflects, the intellectual ownership, whether that's single, joint, or single, on the other side. So we can support you with that. In that mode, our staff are fully able to engage with you intellectually, because disclosure is not something that you're trying to guard. It's a very shared endeavor. So that works for a lot of our users. However, if you're coming from an industrial perspective, and that mode is not going to work for the goals of the project that you're pursuing, we instead have a proprietary user agreement mode. So this operates in a full recovery rate a recharge mode. The current cost is $427 per hour. In that mode, your intellectual property envelope is basically protected or guarded, and will be yours. You're paying for that privilege. And some things to keep in mind are that our staff are able to train you to make instruments available for you, but then they're not intellectually engaging in analysis of the results, or suggesting the next thing to do with your project. And so the collaboration is just has some limitations, right? So there's still work that you can do together. And so and that provides protection for the intellectual property portfolio that you'd be working on for the project. So we do support a few projects like this per year. Any other questions? And panelists, anything else that you think we should share with folks while they're here?
I can go into just a little bit more on the IP side of things,
Okay.
which is the Foundry and the user resources of the Department of Energy work particularly well in protecting your freedom to operate side of being a commercial entity, because you get freedom to operate from every publication that you drop into the public domain. And basic science questions tend to be poorly protected by patents to begin with. So if you have basic science questions that you need to understand in order to enhance your IP portfolio, the Department of Energy is an incredible strategic partner to really go after fundamental science questions that may or may not be patentable in the first place, because the patent office doesn't like to issue fundamental science patents. And there's a lot of fundamental science that underpins any engineered object. So that's where we make an incredible strategic partner. In the proprietary side of things, it's also, we have incredible instruments, but the easiest way to think of it is there's a really clean path to success in the non-proprietary work. If you can hash it out it wouldn't matter who published this fundamental materials characterization, because there's not a device that I need to understand. There's like a fundamental aspect of basic science that I need to understand. That's where you can do a lot of good impact for your understanding of it, with a great huge subsidy from the federal government, because you don't want to have to buy TEMs or AFMs or nanofabrication facilities for your company if there's no reason to have them. You should come use ours. If you really, really have a proprietary focus, then you absolutely need to protect the fabrication modalities of the device. You probably want to use a commercial fab or your own fab, because you're getting to the reduction to practice. And just my advice, I've spent a lot of time in industry. When you get to the reduction to practice phase of whatever it is that you're inventing, your home institution is almost always a better place to reduce it to practice than our institution. When you're answering just fundamental scientific questions about all of the components that go into the reduction to practice, we're a great place to work. So hope that's helpful for anybody considering it.
Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate that perspective. Yeah. And we do have a number of industry users, and I feel like we are able to support them in the right kinds of projects that are building toward this basic science understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great place to work as an industry user. I've actually mostly been a user as an industrial user, not as an academic user.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think this will be our last call here. Any other questions from folks who've joined us today? All right. Then please join me in thanking our panelists. Thanks for being here. And this will be posted to our website soon. So if you have folks that would like to view it as well, we can share that. Thank you.